All right, thank you guys. You see my screen, full screen? All right.
Yes,
Thank
Peter.
you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So welcome everybody. Good to have everybody here. Careers in local and state government. We have several states on our panel today that'll be present, sharing great info for all of us. So good to have everybody here. My name's Peter Bartel. I'm part of the Career Services team that's assisting in the SNHU team that's assisting with putting on the session. We have my colleagues Corey Roy, Mark Schapper, Katie Green, and Nick Domatello assisting with the session as well, all with different parts. You'll see a lot of them in the chat throughout, some behind the scenes, etc. So good to have everybody here. A few housekeeping slides before we get started. FYI, the session is recorded. Your cameras and mics as attendees, alumni and students are already disabled, so you don't have to worry about that. At the end, we will have time for question and answer, and Katie will be encouraging you in the chat throughout. She's going to be putting in a bunch of great resources, but she'll also be encouraging you and reminding you throughout in the chat to submit any questions that you have. We're going to have plenty of time for answer at the end, and I'll gather them for us in order received and address them to the panelists. So good. Accessibility statement here, I'll read it. Individuals with accessibility needs requiring accommodations may reach out to online students OAC at snhu.edu 866-305-9430. Campus students CAC at snhu.edu 603-644-3118. And then SNHU staff and faculty, you have the link there for employee ADA accommodations. All right. Let's see. All right. Katie's going to put this in the chat as well, but FYI, you have access to view any of our events we put on in Career Services or that our employers that are approved with us on Handshake post and host themselves through Handshake. All of these links, by the way, should be clickable on screen for you. In addition to, Katie's going to put them in the chat so you can refer back to it throughout the session. But this is how to view a list of future events on Handshake upcoming. At any given time, we have 20, 30, 40 to choose from between ones that employers put on themselves or ones like this that we set up, facilitate to bring employers to you. So definitely a great resource with Handshake. Be sure to check it out. Another great way to connect alumni and students is on SNHU Connect with us here at SNHU. Lots of professional clubs, organizations, honor societies, events, and more. Create, connect, etc. The resources are on the screen. And by the way, as we're going through these slides here, you can toggle in the bottom left. There should be arrows. You can toggle back and forth if you want to see a previous slide. And Katie's sharing a bunch of this info in the chat as well, so it'll be available for you there throughout the session. All right. Connect with us. Please, please, please do. We are all things career readiness here in Career Services. So if you had questions on Handshake, just for example, needed assistance with your resume, job coaching tips, sale negotiation tips, anything and everything career readiness related, we are here, right? And clcecareer@snhu.edu is the email. 888-672-1458 is the number. You see our social media icons on the bottom there and a link to the site too. And also Katie shared it in the chat. And again, I see people introducing themselves in the chat. Feel free to introduce yourself if you're just hopping in, where you're from, what your major is, etc. Thank you everybody for being here. We're going to give Nick Dominello the floor in just a minute. Dean of Social Sciences. However, want to start by letting the panelists, all four of them, introduce themselves one at a time. You all can see their bios on screen. We're not going to read these bios verbatim. I'm going to give them each the floor to just give a brief few sentences and introduce themselves, and then we'll go onward from there. So we'll start with Joe with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Veterans Services. So Joe, good to have you. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. It's good to be here today. Thanks for having me in. Yeah, my name is Joe Santacroce. I am an employment and staffing coordinator with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' Executive Office of Veteran Services. And so my role is primarily focused on the human resources recruitment end of things. And so you'll see me at job fairs, community events, looking to connect with folks who are job seeking and to talk about opportunities that might exist with us. I've been in this role for almost 2 years. Prior to transitioning into this role, I actually came from the higher education world myself. So I previously worked in career services, and so you know, as Peter said, take advantage of the resource that's available to you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Good to have you, Joe. Thank you. Massachusetts represented. Awesome. Kimberly Koch is next. Sarasota County government. These Kimberly and her agency guys, I got to give them a shout out. They're always posting rules on Handshake. So check them out there as well. But Kimberly, good to have you. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I am Kimberly Kutch. I am the Human Services Manager for Sarasota County Government. And if you don't know where we're approximately 60 miles south of Tampa, Florida. And beautiful city down here with 37 miles of open shoreline along the Gulf, if anybody ever wants to move down this way. I oversee the Human Services Department for the county. And in that, I have contracted human services where we facilitate funding of social services that are critical to the well being of the community and strategically effective. I oversee the opioid settlement dollars that comes into our county. I also have systems coordination, which is child welfare, criminal justice, behavioral health, aging, homelessness, and poverty, where we conduct research and analysis of the system of care issues and help cultivate a collaborative partnership to enhance the community's access to human services. I have veteran services where we help Sarasota County veterans and their families file claims to receive benefits that they're eligible for. And I also have state mandated programs, which is the Healthcare Responsibility Act and also unclaimed and indigent cremation.
Kimberly, you were sharing your responsibilities with me a little bit back, and man, I jaw dropped. That's awesome. A ton, which means a ton of opportunity, right? So,
Yes, it does.
great stuff. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Linda, you have the floor.
All right, great. So I am in the beautiful state of New Hampshire where we have everything from lakes to mountains and lots of snow. So if you're a winter person, come on to New Hampshire. I just want to say if you echo everything that Kimberly just said, state of New Hampshire government would have all of that as well. So depending upon where you want to live, the south or the north, you've got choices here. I do want to mention that we are on Handshake. We've got, I believe, around 12 jobs posted today, but there will be more. We try to continuously put them out there. I love working for the state of New Hampshire. I've been with the state for 18 years, so please do not hesitate and think that, oh, government work, ew. No, it's great. It really is a great opportunity. Real quick, I want to mention we do have an internship posted, and it's exciting because we don't normally have this one posted. It is for the executive council. So some of our executive counselors, so those of you in the political science field, this is really an amazing opportunity that they're opening their door for interns.
Great. Thank you so much, Linda. And Linda's handshake was just put, the state of New Hampshire, sorry, handshake account was put in the chat by Katie, along with all the other ones too. So you can reference them as you're going on here. And we're speaking. Last but definitely not least, we have an SNHU alumnus in the house, Brett Cohen. Brett, go ahead and introduce yourself. Good to have you.
Hi there. Welcome, everybody. So I joined the state of California about 4 years ago after working in the private sector for about 30 plus years. I'm on the IT side. I've been managing staff for about 10 years. I came to the state because I got tired of job uncertainty. And for those of you that are in the private sector, there's a lot of opportunity. You can make a lot of change. You can impact how public sector does things. I'm with California, currently with the California Department of Healthcare Services. They provide vital services for those that need healthcare services. But there's plenty of job opportunities everywhere. So if you're looking for a job, state service is a viable option.
Thank you, Brett, and the rest of the panelists so much. I stopped sharing screen, and we're gonna get into the Q&A portion, led and facilitated by Senior Associate Dean here at SNHU of Social Sciences, Nicholas Dominello. So, Nick, thank you so much for being willing to facilitate this portion of the session. Before I give you the floor, just one last statement again to the audience. We will have plenty of time at the end for question and answer. I will gather any questions that come through in the chat in order. So please, please, please put them in the chat for sure. Your cameras and mics are disabled right now, but at the end, and I'll restate this, if you do want to come on camera and off mute to ask your question instead, we'll have that with the raise hand option as well. So again, thank you everybody for being here. Nick, we'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Peter. Welcome, everybody, and thank you. Special thanks to the panelists for joining us today. My name is Nick Dominello, Senior Associate Dean of Social Sciences. I have the pleasure of working with all of the deans who oversee the programs that you were highlighting in the chat. So that's a great privilege that I have, and looking forward to seeing this discussion unfold. And please, as Joe mentioned earlier, please take advantage of all of the resources that are available to you with the great career team at SNHU. I want to start it off by asking Brett to piggyback on what you were just mentioning about your transition from the private to the public sector. So just open it up to you with the first question. In your opinion, what do you think are the most transferable skills from the private to the public sector?
Essentially, any skill that you have gained and learned while working in the private sector is transferable. Pretty much everything. After working in private sector for 30 years, like I said, I got tired of basically the final straw was when the company I was working for was acquired, and I was part of that first round of layoffs, and I needed a job. I was fortunate to land a job with the state. I took all of my skills that I've learned over the years, and I was fortunate to get hired by the California Department of Motor Vehicles. I had a manager who thought outside the box, wanted to bring somebody in from the outside to change the way they did their processes. The state tends to be a little static in process. It moves like a snail's pace. You don't implement change overnight. It takes time. My manager liked the fact that I was involved in projects, initiated change. We didn't wait for somebody to say, it's been 5 years, how come this hasn't happened? So I was able to institute change, not rapid change, but enough change to improve how my support team did their job. We got involved with more projects. We interacted with across other parts of IT at DMV. So again, it wasn't rapid, wasn't glacier, but we were able to move in a good pace. So everything that you learn over between your education and your past work experience is pretty much all transferable. You could take everything that you've learned or a past job, I don't care what the job is, and you'll be able to find even an entry-level job to get your foot in the door.
Happy to jump in too to add a little bit. First, I would just echo everything that Brett mentioned, particularly that the state moves at a snail's pace. We are no stranger to that ourselves in Massachusetts. We do our best at EOVS to try to move forward as quickly as we are able to do so. But when it comes to skills, I agree. Anything and everything is really transferable from the private sector to the public sector. But one of the things that I think is really important to highlight are the attention to detail. Both when you're applying to jobs and when you're in the job itself. When I say when you're applying to jobs, I want you to make sure that you're looking at a job description thoroughly. You're looking at the requirements of the position. Because we are state, we have to adhere to all of those requirements and make sure that a candidate matches up to that. So that's one part I would say. The other part, what I said, was when you're in your job itself. And that to me is important because everything that we're doing is public record, right? And so obviously professionalism is super important in any industry and whether it's private or public, but knowing that you're at the government level, everything is public. So making sure that your attention to detail is, is really on point.
Thank you. Going to ask this question to Linda to start us off. What advice do you have for students looking to gain experience in the social sciences field before landing a full-time job?
Yes, get it. That's my first advice, is get some. You'd be amazed at the number of people that finish their degrees that look to the state for a job and have never even worked at McDonald's or anything. And we just won't even consider you, to be blunt. I don't mean to be too blunt, but I have to be. If you want a state job, we do require experience. We'll have a few and far between list of opportunities where you could probably squeak by, and your education can sub for experience. So if it only requires an associate's when posted and you have your bachelor's, then that can be 2 years of experience. So it does work that way. However, if you want to come on board with a degree in, psychology or something like that, and you've never even worked with people, it's really not going to work. My biggest suggestion is walk into a facility where you want to work and see if you can even sweep floors. See if you can even, be do a role, administrative paperwork, filing, because you do start to learn about those roles just by being in the atmosphere of the type of work that you want to be. So my biggest suggestion is get any experience. But if you know where your focus is going to be, walk into a facility that has that type of work.
I'll add to that because I get people who are applying for an IT job with no experience at all. And one of the things that I tell people, and I help people out quite often that are trying to land jobs, is even if you don't have the time to work a full-time job, volunteer time, do internships while, and this is actually something I've spoken with Mark about and some other folks, is it's important for students that are maybe in their second or third year to go ahead, look for those internships, volunteer a day on the weekend, once a month or twice a month, just to show that you have put in the time to gain some basic experience. And that carries a lot of weight. We have student assistant programs. I always look for student assistants to get them on board because I know that they've given up the time while they're attending classes to get that extra education.
I'd add into that too. Your part-time jobs are certainly worth something here, particularly if you're doing this while you're pursuing your degree. But let's say you're working in an industry that's not relatable to your major. Well, can you talk to your manager, supervisor, whoever it might be, to see if you can add elements into that role that might give you some hands-on experience, right? So I'll give you an example. I worked with a student years ago who was employed at a grocery store, but they were looking to break into the marketing field. And I said, well, why don't you have a conversation with your supervisor to see if you can maybe set up displays, create flyers, things like that, that'll give you a little bit of that marketing experience that you can then add to your resume. So it's not the primary function of your job, but you're at least getting some of that experience in there, So anything and everything that would be relatable. And yeah, volunteering your time doesn't take a lot of time. You don't have to do it for 40 hours a week. Even an internship, right? Sometimes you can negotiate with an employer, say, well, I have these other obligations and responsibilities. I'm only available 6 to 8 hours a week. That's still something. So flexibility is also important.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, don't mute your mic because I'm coming right back to you with the next question. So along the lines, and that was great advice for students seeking jobs. How can applicants stand out when they apply for roles within your agency?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So really the first part of this, I would say, is a lot of what we just said, right? So thinking about that relatable experience, but getting it onto your resume in a professional manner, making sure that you're highlighting of those relatable skills and experiences, so that when folks like myself on the recruitment side are looking at your resume, we can determine that yes, you are qualified for this job, you meet our requirements for the job. Two, because we are a state agency, again, we have to kind of follow those guidelines to a T. So making sure that you're looking at what we call the minimum entrance requirements, that you would suffice those. Sometimes, yes, it is years of experience, but other times a degree could actually help you to take away some of those necessary years. So keep an eye on that. The last part I would say, and I don't think this is going to be unique to us, but I know that a lot of times when you're job searching, we tend to have one, two, three places that we really want to zero in on, we really want to work, right? And so what I've seen on my end on the HR side is that candidates will apply to every single job within our agency. There is nobody that has all of that experience to apply to every single job. And I'll tell you what, when we see the same name popping up all the time, that's gonna generate a red flag. I am not telling you that you can't apply to multiple jobs with us, but make sure that the ones that you are applying for, you have the experience that's necessary for it, right?
I
I
want
just,
to reach out. Go ahead, Kimberly. You
oh
haven't
no,
had. Yes.
no, I was just going to say, when we get cover letters, and I just finished doing some interviews, making sure that you're putting down in that cover letter the understanding of the agency that you're applying for, because I can't tell you how many times I'm getting an application because I'm human services and they think I may be health department, and it's two completely different aspects, and so it's kind of frustrating to see that, um, and also really proofreading that cover letter in your resume or your application that you put in.
I wanted to emphasize what Joe and others have said about the minimum quals. We are bound by laws. It's not just rules, it's also laws. So when you want to work for a government, we do have to follow what's in our postings. We can't just throw away the posting and say, "Oh, I like this person, let's hire them." So you really do want to pay attention to that. I asked some questions to some of our hiring managers, and that came back from them as well. So that's how important it is in government work to understand the minimum quals. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't be creative. If you're going for a widget maker and you've only made circular widgets and not square widgets, you can at least still say, "Hey, I did make widgets." All right. So with your resumes, be creative without lying, but be creative and let us know how your work does fit into our qualifications, even if it might be a little outside the box in the thinking.
I can add a little bit more. One of the things, and I've done my fair share of hiring, I think in the 4 years, I've probably hired about 8 people in a short time. We get job across the entire state. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of job postings. The most important thing is, it's just like any other job. Read the job description. We have what we call as a duty statement, which is what you're expected to be able to do for that job. Read it accurately. Make sure your job application is complete and accurate. We don't always ask for a resume or a cover letter. We may just rely on what's in your job application. So if it's missing information, we can't understand what your experiences are. We have something, I would say 50% of the job postings require something called a statement of qualifications, or simply SOQ. This is where we'll have certain questions listed. You answer those questions as detailed, concise as possible. because we're grading you on that. And based on your application and your skills and your SOQ response is how we grade you to determine if we're going to actually ask you to an interview. For interviews, there's something called the STAR method. It's basically a situation, task, action, result. When you're being asked, in most county, state interviews are panel interviews where there's multiple people asking you questions and we all collaborate at the end and we score you. Following that process helps. I have some links. I don't know. I posted them early, but I can send them out. And there's also an article from the Harvard Business Review as well, that how you can leverage that. So again, you need to look very carefully at what's being asked and highlight what your skill sets are. Just like when you interview or apply for a job, the job requirements may change from job to job. So you may want to tweak that application and your resume if it's asked for.
Thank you all. I'm going to pivot to Kimberly. And you were talking about the cover letter. And aside from the confusion between healthcare and human services, what's a common misconception about working in human services that you wish more students knew?
One of the biggest misconceptions, I was with the state of Florida for 22 years in management positions before I came to the county, and it has changed since I started in human services. And people that apply think that they really, unfortunately, they're going to spend a lot of time with these families, with our clients, sitting down, spending hours trying to figure out what's going on and making referrals to the services. And then those referrals are going to be there and everything is going to end up okay. And that's not reality. Families have become more complex with the problems that they have. There's a lack of funding for services. Some people just don't want help. And there is a lot of paperwork, a lot of paperwork. When I first started all those years ago, we didn't have this paperwork that we had to do. We didn't even have computers. So we did have the time to do that. But as you know, time has gone on, people don't realize how much paperwork there is. And that seems to be the biggest frustration that I've had with my staff that are coming into this job, especially ones that have just graduated from college and they want to save the world.
I'll add also one of the misconceptions that was brought to my attention by the hiring managers. They're saying it's not just social work. Okay, you got to broaden your horizons and think about all the aspects. So, even just looking at the college catalog and seeing all the different majors listed under social sciences, etc., it is a vast array of opportunities. So make sure you're talking to your school counselors and stuff about the different ways to go, because it's not just one area. It is so varied that you'll have a lot of different opportunities out there if you just keep your eyes open to the fact that, oh yeah, this is within my degree field. It could be a way that I could turn and take that career path. So there are a lot of career paths associated with this whole human services field.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo the funding challenges, the paperwork and documentation that's needed for all this, for sure. I think there's also a misconception sometimes that government work is kind of like, oh, you're not working very hard, when it's just the opposite. It is hard work, and you're busy all the time. Believe you me, you're busy all the time. And the last part of it, I would say too, is just the element of customer service, I think, is something that often gets overlooked. And I don't care what role you're in, customer service is going to be at the forefront for whatever it is. Even if you think that, well, my role isn't really going to be out facing anything, nope, it's constituents, it's the folks that you're working for, working with. Customer service is a big element to all this stuff. So don't let that piece, don't let that slide.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I'm going to turn to you, Brett, and ask, what are the biggest challenges for early career professionals in social sciences / human services, and how can they navigate them?
Well, yeah, I'm on the IT side of life, so it's hard to say, but
You can phone a friend if you want, Brett. That's
yeah,
fine.
I have an answer for
I
that.
Yeah.
yes, I'm gonna punt that one.
So for me, and what I see is just people coming out of college wanting, not understanding really what the job entails. They're overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed by the paperwork because you seem to spend more time with the paperwork than you do with your client. High caseloads because there's a high turnover in social services. Low pay. Just it seems like it's a revolving door. You're expected to do more with less. And, you know, unfortunately, we also get caught up in a rut that this is a job, you're here to serve people, you can save people's lives by doing your job. And we're neglecting that the people that work for us also have a life, they also have a family, and we're human services, and we need to remember that. And so that's getting that happy medium is sometimes extremely difficult to do.
Yeah, I want to echo some of that, and the words that were sent to me were fatigue, burnout. You come out of college with all these ideas, and you think you're just gonna go right in there, and it doesn't take long for the weight of what you're dealing with to really become part of you, and it weighs you down. So take care of your health as well, not your mental health, your whole health, the whole person. Take care of it. And we as employers, I agree, we need to do a better job of paying attention and allowing these people to come to us and say, hey, I'm struggling. I want to do my job, but I'm struggling, and not make them feel like they're going to be disciplined or lose their job because they say they're struggling doing it. So yeah, the burnout part was really emphasized when I asked the hiring managers about this. Is that's going to be a challenge in an early career, is learning how to do the job and take care of yourself.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Linda, I'm going to come right back to you for our final panel question. It's, how do confidentiality and ethics impact daily work in social sciences and human services?
Well, it's part of the career path 100%, day in, day out, moment by moment. It's similar to HR work. It's where you really, everything that you're hearing has to remain confidential. The only ones you share it with are the ones in your work area that, the supervisors, the counselors, anyone that you're working with in that realm, that is required to know. We have to also remember, however, that we do work for the public, and so they're going to have access to some of our information. So we have to be careful of what we put in our emails, what we talk about with coworkers, etc. Because if somebody puts out a right to know request and it's deemed that it's not necessarily confidential, what we're saying is going to be out there and the public will have access to it. And that includes the media. So you want to remember, you have to be confidential. You're dealing with people's lives, people's stories, people's needs, their hardships. It's confidential, except for when there's a right to know. There's some aspects of it that will become public, and your words could become public. So it's also part of this is also dealing with things in a respectful manner, because things you say could become public even though it's supposed to be confidential. So you have to be confidential. Things are confidential, but there are still portions of it that can become public.
Yeah, I'll add that to that. And Linda, I completely agree with everything you just said, particularly when we're in the public eye, right? So being mindful of that at all times. But if any element of a job has a confidentiality piece to it, information, right? Customers that you're serving, things like that. So we work with veterans. I was on interviews this week where we asked a question directly about confidentiality. because this person would be in a position that they're helping veterans to gain benefits, and that would mean that there's private information that they would need to make sure that they're sharing, and it's something that we have to be very, very mindful of, because of the public elements, obviously. But yeah, it's personal information. We cannot be responsible for letting information get into the wrong hands. Let's say, right? So something to always kind of keep in the back of your mind anytime you're in a government type of role.
We're required to take ethics classes,
Mhm.
and also a big chunk of us have to sign a COI, a conflict of interest paperwork. We renew those annually. I was working on a project at DMV, a project with Google. I have Google stocks. I had to disclose that. I was not allowed to let the fact that I was working on a project with Google impact, and the fact that I had shares in Google. We're touching PII and HIPAA data, either directly or indirectly. So we have to be very cognizant of what we're doing. We have to make sure that we follow security protocols, that we have to make sure that if they use data loss prevention tools, to make sure that we're flagging the data properly. When we get calls to reset passwords from the medical centers, hospitals, and providers to access Medi-Cal, which is Medicaid, the systems, that's millions of accounts that we have to make sure that we don't compromise. So there's many layers. And again, PRA, public record requests, those are pretty important. We need to be very cognizant of what we're doing and not leak stuff accidentally or leave papers out, or to protect everybody's data.
And as someone said, we always have to, take the trainings annually, but it's also, even if the disclosure of information is unintentional, it can harm the trust that you've built with the clients that you're working with, which is extremely impactful. But it also discredits you within the public when you're working for a government, and the public interest and faith and trust in your organization and what you do can be damaged, and it can be hard to come back from.
Yeah.
Thank you all. It's been great interacting with you and facilitating these panel discussions. I know the students have a ton of questions waiting for you, so I'm going to hand it back over to Peter. Thanks.
Thanks all. Awesome job, Nick. Thank you so much for facilitating. Alumni students, you kept Katie and the rest of the team very busy in the chat, so thank you. Awesome job to you all. We're all here to learn and educate from each other, right? So great questions. I logged pretty much all of them. I just got the last one or two to get here, but I'm going to ask them in order to the panelists. I'm going to open most of these to the floor panelists, and whoever wants to answer can answer. A few of them are addressed to individuals directly. So for those, I'll address to those folks. FYI again, for attendees, you can, there's a raise hand feature in the upper center. If you want to come on camera and off mute to ask your question, just raise your hand and I'll go in order that way to enable your camera and mic, as it's disabled right now. If not, totally fine. Feel free to continue submitting your questions in the chat. And also, like, as we're going here, if you hopped on maybe a few minutes in, remember Katie Green shared a lot of resources at the beginning on Handshake, the company's individual handshakes, for which many of them have several jobs posted. So refer to those. There's a lot of great content and resources that can help you with your career growth, in addition to what the panelists have shared here today. So panelists, thanks again for hopping on. We'll get to it with the first question. Let's see. Aaron Peterson asked for Linda, what is the work culture of New Hampshire's government like?
It's varied. So in general, it's not, how do I say this? It's not laid back, but it is. What I mean by that is New Hampshire does work hard, works very hard, but we also enjoy New Hampshire. So as far as that type of an atmosphere, we enjoy each other. Now, I say varied because could you ever come up against a hiring manager that's like, walk through the door, be quiet, get your job done, I want silence? Yes. Hope, they don't stay around forever, but they do exist. So I'm not going to say this is across the board, but in general, I love working for New Hampshire. I've worked directly for the Department of Corrections. I currently work for the Division of Personnel. I've worked with safety. I've worked with Health and Human Services in projects, that type of stuff. I've never not laughed. And so when you can attend any meeting of any topic and laugh, you know that you're working with a good group of people, and that's thousands of people. And so I say the atmosphere in New Hampshire is wonderful.
That's great. Thank you. And you led with that too in your intro, like the different areas of New Hampshire in a way. So
Yeah.
that echoes for sure. That's consistent. I appreciate that. And I also appreciated your comment earlier on, making sure that your mental health stays paramount even in the workplace. And I know that's something a lot of employers focus on, which is important. A best practice that helps me is just pausing, closing my eyes, and even if I can't step away, just a quick 10 seconds in, 10 seconds out. So I appreciated that comment as well, Linda. Thank you. Henry Renee asked the next question, and this is for all. What career opportunities are available for forensic psychology majors with a bachelor's degree?
We have, state hospitals here in Florida that would utilize that type of degree for mental health, behavioral health.
Yeah, there's an agency within the Commonwealth that would be looking for that. There's obviously the Division of the State Police. There's also a forensics department as well, and they fall under the Executive Office of, I hope I get this right, Public Safety and Security. So if you're interested, go to mass.gov and you can search opportunities on there.
Outside of the fact that we're technically in a hiring freeze right now, typically I can go in and I can do search for word psychology in our job search and get pages of job opportunities. Now, just because we're in a hiring freeze doesn't mean we're not hiring. We are hiring direct care people. So people with psychology degrees actually are in a good place right now to look for state jobs. So in New Hampshire, we have the same. We have our hospitals that we need psychologists. We need people that are case managers. We also have our Department of Corrections, our Department of Safety, etc., and they all use case managers. And the corrections also, basically anything HHS has, corrections has a form of it. And finally, just the entry level roles of family services specialists, the clinical mental health counselors. I don't mean that it's an entry level role, but you can start at an entry level and progress in the job title at different levels. So there's many in state government in different agencies where the psychology degree would be very helpful.
And with us, I was focusing more on the forensic psychology, which is really big for our hospitals, but obviously that can be applied, just like Linda said, in some other departments within child welfare, adult services, Department of Corrections.
Thank you all. Good stuff. Brett, this next one's probably best for you, but anybody can answer. Tara Price asked, with the world of AI going strong, how stable is the job in IT?
Jobs are stable because so even with AI, government entities are not diving in headfirst into AI. We're putting our foot into the water, taking the temperature. I worked on 2 AI projects over the last 4 years. Actually, the state of California does have 2 executive orders regarding AI that we're allowed to evaluate. And so we create sandbox in sandbox environments so that we can implement and test in a secure environment, leaving guardrails in place. I attended a few summits regarding AI, and I've actually set up training plans for my team and others that AI's a few years out, get your training. This is what you need to learn. So your jobs are in IT are safe, but take the effort to learn AI, whether you're in the development stage or LLMs, or just to get that basic understanding and see how it works. Don't be the last one.
Thank you. Had something. Yes. So on the topic of AI in general, though, remember, students and alumni, you all have access to LinkedIn Learning. At SNHU. Feel free to utilize that resource on AI or any topic, right? I'm actually going through one right now, and they just mentioned what Linda talked about, how to just make sure you stay grounded at work, stepping away, and how important that is. So just wanted to bring AI into the mix, but thank you, Brett. Go ahead.
Well, one other thing I'll add to the AI is I've become in some of my counterparts, we've become pretty adept at catching people who write SOQs that have used AI exclusively without putting their information into it. And I've had meetings with our recruiting teams and say, look, we need to do this or we need to do that. We do a lot of virtual interviews still. And we've actually have disclaimers basically saying no electronic devices. We've seen people that have basically turned on the microphone on their phone, listen to the question, wait for the phone to generate a response, and then regurgitate what's on there. I've been leading a group of folks in talking with our recruiting areas that we need to be very aware of it. But again, AI is great, has a lot of benefits. You need to have the guardrails. It's not going to generate fake stuff, but it could typically. But yes, again, LinkedIn Learning, great avenue. There's a lot of tools out there. Feel free to reach out to me. I have a contact at Google that can get some. I could send links for possibly free training. AWS is great resources. There's a bunch of others, but if you haven't put your foot in the water, learn it, get some basic knowledge.
Thanks, Brett. Jen Vincent, thank you. Jen just put in the chat as a student or alumni steps on how to access it. So thank you, Jen. Good stuff. The next question is career readiness related from Christina Cajudo. Does publishing articles and blog posts about our interests or personal mission help enhance our resume, showcase our identity, and provide insight into who we are? I'll open this to the floor.
I can start.
Okay.
I was going to say, generally speaking, I think it can. If you're looking to go into that type of field, I think it would help you a lot more. From our point of view, I mean, that stuff is good, but we're also, remember, government agency looking at applicable experience for a role, so, but I don't think that could hurt. It showcases who you are as an individual, provides, additional information, and just make sure that everything that you're putting out there is, appropriate and professional.
Yeah. It comes down to as long as it's pertinent to what the type of job. If you're going for public relations or marketing, yes, that is going to be very helpful. If you're writing papers pertaining to items that you studied, yes, because that's helping you get a job. But if it's something that's out there that's not relevant, we just don't pay attention.
I'm just going to say, piggybacking that, both what you both just said, unless it's negative, because we will have current state employees, if they hear a name is in the running, they'll start Googling the person and they'll read everything. And if there's anything negative, they bring it to our attention. So you want to start at this, well, you want to start when you're 5 years old, but you want to start now making sure you're not putting out in public venues items that career people, you sorry, I just lost my train of thought, but your hiring managers may not appreciate. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well when you're submitting stuff for the public view.
Gotcha. Thank you all. Next question has to do with virtual interviewing, which I really like, from Lauren Connor. She said her organization in her state has done some interviews by Zoom. What are some tips? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Sorry guys, my headset went weird. What are some tips for Zoom interviews or Teams or whatever virtual platform one may use?
Probably, making sure that you have your background changed or, blurry. Because there's some things in the background you don't want people to see when you're doing an interview. Also really thinking about what you're wearing. I've been on a Zoom before with someone who had a martini on their shirt. Like, what is this?
Dress to impress, dress appropriately. I've been on interviews where I was interviewing for a position. I had a jacket and a tie, a proper shirt on. Make sure you're in a quiet space, so this way background noises aren't a problem. The background, make sure blur the background. Also, if you have a virtual background, make sure it's appropriate. And make sure that you do everything you can so that you're not distracted. A lot of us are still doing virtual interviews. We're actually slowly moving to in-person because most of us are moving back into the office 4 or 5 days a week. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, echo everything everybody said. Obviously quiet space, appropriate attire, backgrounds, all that good stuff. The last thing I would say is make sure your camera works. If it's a virtual interview, we want you on camera. And listen, technology happens and things come up last minute, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this isn't working. I don't know why. Hey, that's cool. That stuff happens, but for the most part, it's professional. So make sure that the camera's on.
And I just want to add, yes, we can tell if you're on your phone while you're interviewing on camera. So please do not be typing away thinking we can't see your hands. We still can tell.
Yep. Virtual interviewing is a different thing. So I love that question. Definitely some best and worst practices you can see with it. Awesome. Let's see, I had one pulled up here.
I just throw one more thing in there for you, Peter, too.
Yeah.
So, some of us, maybe, depending on where you live, your neighbors are close, right? And so, hey, you can't control when somebody's mowing the lawn or doing some construction work or who knows, right? Myself, I have 2 younger kids, and so sometimes there's noise above me. So I think that if it happens to be at the same time, give the interviewers a heads up. Hey, listen, sorry about that. My neighbor happens to be outside right now. I'm trying to mitigate the noise, but if you hear something, my apologies. I think sometimes that can go a long way. And it also, I think, helps to relieve you as the interviewer a little bit to say, you know what, I can kind of get that out of my mind and just focus in on the questions and answers.
Something little that I just heard in a LinkedIn I know I'm promoting LinkedIn Learning like crazy, but I learned this in a LinkedIn Learning was pay attention to your foot position and make sure both your feet are flat on the floor. I don't know if any of you have been mindful of that in the past. I really have not. And I think Linda was speaking, and honestly, I had my leg crossed, and whatever she said prompted me to recall that, and now they're flat on the floor, but it helps you to stay more centered, I think, and focused is the message that was relayed. So definitely little tips, body language wise too, and posture, they can help. Let's see. Andrea Salati. Andrea, awesome question. She said, I have experience working in a political organization in Croatia where I was involved with community outreach. How might that experience be relevant to a career in government social services in the US?
Well, I mean, just being able to explain what that outreach was and what specifically that you were doing.
Yeah, if it's relevant experience, I would say it counts, regardless of where you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're dealing with people. You're working with people. People are people, and it doesn't matter where they're from. It just, where they are placed. It just matters that, yes, you worked with people and you have that skill, and you can transfer it to this, this town, this city, this state, whatever the case may be.
Right. Perfect. I think that's where it would start and stop, right? People are people, and the experience is the experience. We had a statement earlier too in the chat that I thought was good, about attending city council meetings and whether that counted as relevant experience. So I'm seeing some heads nod. Yes, that you would put that on a resume. You would agree with that?
For attending meetings,
Yeah.
are we in a position or just as a citizen attending a meeting?
Just a citizen attending the meeting.
I'm not sure that would be direct relevant experience. However, I think if we're highlighting our, civic engagement and being aware of things, right? If I attend these meetings, I'm applying to a job in my city or town, then yeah, I think there could be some relevance in terms of some of your answers, to show that you're on top of things, you're aware of things, right? But to me, just attending a meeting doesn't necessarily translate to professional work experience.
So making sure you articulate on your
Yes.
takeaways from it. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
I know there was some others that wanted to answer. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say I agree with that, in that it's more about that could maybe put you that 1 point ahead of the person beside you if you have similar degrees, similar work experience, knowing that you actually went to some government meetings that and you're looking for maybe a government job. It's just like, okay, this person understands that it's not always joyous in these places, yet they're still willing to come work for us and deal with this type of a meeting situation if they were if they're willing to go to these town meetings and they seem to have input from them or get stuff from them. They understand that the government works in a variety of ways, and that's going to put them just that little notch ahead of the other person. That's all I was thinking.
Great. We have time for one more quick question. James Jones asked, what extra certifications or skills can help me stand out when applying?
Public management, Sterling, PMP.
I guess it would depend on the degree too, right? Within the social sciences, human services field. But
And I would say it also depends on the job that you're applying for, right? But I know that, for us, if we're hiring a job that's going to be interfacing a lot with veterans, perhaps a certificate or something in suicide prevention or things of that nature, where you may encounter those types of conversations in your daily work.
great. Well, want to be mindful of everybody's time. So thank you all for attending. Refer to the chat, alumni and students, for resources. This will be recorded. Katie posted it earlier, but it's also going to be on our career YouTube page within a day or two. So feel free to reference it there at any time. Panelists, thank you so much for attending. Good to have all of you, and everybody have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Appreciate your time.
Bye, all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.